Tommy Rock. All right, Tommy, you got the floor.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Friday, finally Friday. Um, well, before I start, I just need to tell you what's happening right now is well, I haven't I have a lot of family that were involved with the whole uranium industry during the Cold War, and and so a lot of them passed, but and I lost my uncle last year in April. And this is right before I was into this US EPA environmental justice webinar for US EPA. And on that particular day, I was back at home. My grandfather or my uncle, which I was really close to, he was the one that like kept encouraging us go to school, go to school, go to school, as well as well, my grandfather said as well. But so that particular day, it's I was burying him when I was doing the webinar. I had my black suit on and stuff, and I the date was set, and I had an option of postponing it, and because it was a personal time to bury my uncle. It's like my uncle died of prostate, bone cancer, and brain tumor. So it spread. So So I decided to do the webinar anyways. We got my uncle prep and put it up front, and so everybody can say their goodbye and have their stories and stuff like the history of my uncle. I left and I went to a private place and did the webinar. I told my audience what was happening that particular day and why I was dressed up and I wanted my audience to know this issue of exposure and the continue of people suffering from that exposure from cancer and how real it is for someone like me and people that have been impacted in areas from the past mining. And I want them to see that in real time when it was happening. And and I did my presentation of all the presentation I've ever done. I think that was probably the poorest I ever done because of the circumstances. And I always think about that. I got a lot of condolences and stuff, and and I don't know if my audience. I mean, they hear me say it, but I don't know if they know the reality of what's going on in a lot of these communities as well. And and going to a lot of meetings with my knowledge and all. I hear a lot of that from the community member as well, and and that always comes to mind as well. But I want to show you like a couple slides. Can I do the share? Can I?
Yep, I just made the
All right.
adjustments. Thank you.
All right. Well, well, the first one is this is who I am. I'm a researcher. I'm a professor at Northern Arizona University, and my grandfather, this guy was the one that really put me on my journey to where I'm at right now. And back in high school, ever since I was a little kid, he was like, go to school, go to school, go to school. And he's a World War II vet serving the army. And he he died of cancer. And that particular day, I remember when that happened, I was like doing my master's and I got a phone call at 5, 6 in the morning. He's like, our grandfather have a couple hours to live, so I rushed back. On my way back, he passed away. And my cousin that was with him at the time on his deathbed is like, he won't go. He put up a fight. And he had to tell him, like, hey, he's like, you gotta go, you gotta go. It's like, we'll take care of our grandmother. And finally, he let go. And this picture on the left is the last place that he worked on. And on that particular date, on his last day there, they were walking out, and he was walking in the middle. There's another guy behind him, and there's a big old boulder that fell, and the guy that behind him was killed by that big boulder. That was the boulder that was blocking the entrance to that uranium mine was his grave. And on that particular day, everybody left and never went back to work to that. That's Moonlight Mine. From where I'm at right now to this place is about 3 miles south of me as a bird flies. And on the bottom is Holiday Mesa. It's just like I look out my door and this is Holiday Mesa, and that's what I'll be looking at. That's my Lake Doggy. And my grandmother. My grandmother lived to be 104 years old. So this is the uranium mine, and that's where they're located between the Shin and Monkopi formation. They're not all in all these formations. They're in particular locations, like mostly in the late Triassic period. There was like a big river that was flowing from Texas to Washington. That's that river, and there was tributaries that flow into it, and they are in locations where you can see a little dip that goes like that, and you can see the ore right there, and that's what those are, and this is Skyline Uranium Mine, and these is where they're located, in other places along the Grants Mineral Belt. They're in the Westwater Formation. And there's a lot more formation as well in the geology. This is like to show, I usually like to show my audience, it's not just in those formations, but they're in other formation as well. And Arizona's here. Grants Mineral Belt. This study that I did with Solana Lake Enterprise, a grassroots organization, was about the mine spill that happened back in '79 in Church Rock, the uranium mining and milling activity that was going on for 20 plus years, and the groundwater being contaminated, and it showed up in Sanders like 20, 30 years later. And back in 2015, it's like we got a grant and was able to see the water quality for the public water and in some of the springs along the Perko River as well. And that's the study that showed like public water contamination in the school as well. And we fought with US EPA from Region 9 about the chronic exposure from that community. And also we fought with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, like a environmental justice issue. And nothing happened until NBC News got a hold of it. They did a two-part series on that. And that's when everything changed. And finally, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality got involved and they did something about it. And with the work that we've done for this era, we're able to change laws related to small rural public water systems from water contamination. And I'm really happy with that. So something like that can never happen again in Arizona, which I'm really happy with that. And this just shows you like some of the stuff that happened with the Church Rock spill, some of the heavy metals and all like that were able to flow down river. And I have some soil results that show not only uranium, thorium, and radium levels, and some of the sediment like in the soil. I do see cesium as well, which you only see cesium when there's like a something nuclear happen, and in this case, it was like downwinders from the nuclear testing that happened in Nevada. I do see that in the soil, and I talked to other collaborators from University of Arizona, University of New Mexico about that as well, and from the folks from University of New Mexico, my former mentor, Dr. Johnny Lewis, I talked to her about that, and they do see some of that in their sample as well. There's a combination of heavy metal that they see, and I want to really focus in on cesium as well in the soil, and I want to know to what extent there's cesium there. So that's like a future stuff that I want to look into. And this just shows you like some of the health disparities within indigenous population when it comes to exposure, like lack of public water, which you probably hear a lot about on Navajo Nation, and some of the health issue related to uranium exposure is like it's becoming generational. It's not only from poor past miners, but it's going to the public as well. And when we have meetings, community meetings, about uranium exposure, a lot of the crew members will go to that and come forward about their family, loved ones, friends that passed from cancer. So it's still happening. And I talked to my leaders, my tribal leaders, my council delegates about um, addressing that and maybe creating some sort of policy around um, uranium exposure that's happening nowadays with the general public that live in those areas. And so far, I haven't seen anything yet. And this is the study that I did in Sanders and the people that were involved. And nowadays, you see stuff like this. When there's like the water contaminations, I put some of these signs up about water contaminations, and there's a lot of them in um, the rural isolated areas of Navajo Nation. And here are some of the contaminated areas related to uranium as well. And the left corner where the sign that says danger, keep out, that is in my neighborhood. There's no fence around it. And I do see some of the uranium ore down below as well. It's they're still out there. So that's where a lot of my work comes in, and the stuff that I do in educating the public and working with students, from graduate students to undergraduate students, and doing presentation across the country with different universities, like University of Wisconsin-Madison did presentation there, Northwestern University, the main campus, and the law school downtown Chicago, Dartmouth, Brown University, Yale University at their environmental justice conference in at Princeton as well, and University of Oklahoma. So, um, yeah, and that is my presentation and what I do, and addressing and educating the public.
Thank you, Dr. Rock. What you just shared is really heavy, it's heartbreaking, and it's real. And I want to just say that your personal story, these are just not statistics or stories from a distance. They're really right here next to us with the lives, family members that we know, and they're from, yeah, our communities. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. The first one, can you share more about this impact to these communities, to the people living in these contaminated areas? And I know that this work around the uranium exposure, it translates, like what you said, into different rates of cancer on the Navajo Nation. So what are these people going through health-wise? Dr. Rock, you're on mute.
Yeah. It's like they a lot of them are struggling with that and looking for some help with that and going to specialized care. Um, there is a cancer center in Tuba City, and those that can make it go there. In other cases, they go elsewhere as well. But in terms of having a policy, I think that is much needed, because there is a policy from foreign miners and millers with the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, but there's nothing with the general public. It's just not with Navajo Nations. There are other tribes that are facing the same issue as well. Like from here, the Ute tribes, the Pueblo tribes, the Northern Arapaho, Eastern Shoshones, the Sioux Nations, um, and other tribe as well. So it's like it goes beyond the Arizona state line as well. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I had questions about two things about this. Does the ADQ testing, will that show when wells and city water supplies is radioactive part of that, or are they just looking for carcinogens?
Um, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, when it comes to public water, they do look at that. They do look at radionuclides. They do look at heavy metals and volatile organic compounds. And if we look at their consumer report, yeah, it's called CCR. And if you look that online, it will tell you which if it was flags, like it'll tell you like the water quality from the previous years, and if they had any violation, that will show in that report, the CCR report. But um in terms of tribes, I know for Navajo Nation Public Water looks at that for Navajo Nations.
The other part of the question was, how does the water get contaminated? Can it happen from the naturally occurring uranium, or is it almost always from mine tailings?
Some of them are natural. Yes, some of them are natural. And for the state of Arizona, the most common issue is arsenic. It's just because of the geology. So a lot of them are just natural. And in some areas on Navajo Nation, there are some springs that are elevated just because of natural uranium. A good example, there's a spring called Tohatchee Spring in an area called Black Falls. It's a community that feels like they're neglected from Navajo Nation as well. And that community, Tohatchee Spring, has elevated level of uranium in that it's not a regulated water point, it's unregulated, and it was put in place by U.S. Public Health um, with the policy they have from the 1920s, and that particular spring was used by one particular family, and numerous family members from that one particular family died of cancer. But the uranium level for that particular spring was like 120 parts per billion. So when it comes to uranium, it's like 30 parts per billion is the maximum contaminant level, and that one particular spring was elevated is like 120 parts per billion, and arsenic was like around 80 parts per billion. And with arsenic, the methane contaminant level is 10 parts per billion.
Okay, I
So,
don't want
Dr. Rock?
I'll make the time. I
yeah,
had one more question about what's the status of the Pinyon Plain mine now? We're stuck with it, but what about the transportation across the lands?
well, I was informed at a meeting that now EPA is regulating that. To what extent, I don't know. All they said was it's being regulated. I don't know where they stop and get that check, but that's what we were told.
Thanks.
So, Dr. Rock, I want to have you talk about the systemic solutions and policy. So, we have this law, the Safe Drinking Water Act, and most people assume that it's doing what it's supposed to do, protect our communities. But when you talk about what you just shared, this is not always the case. So can you help us understand the limitations on this law and on the tribal lands? What's being left out and what needs to change?
What needs to change is the Safe Drinking Water Act. A lot of it is based on population density. So where there's populations, the water line get extended to those locations. But in a lot of cases for Navajo Nations, a lot of people live in rural isolated areas, and it's not feasible um, to extend a lot of those water lines to like maybe one family or a few families, and so they're left out. So in those cases, like people that living in rural isolated areas will continue to use some of these unregulated water sources because that's like the closest and nearest and accessible location for them to get water. And in some cases, um, some of those sources are elevated in some of the heavy metals as well, and some of them have signs that it's risk communications. There's sign that says there's elevated level of uranium in water and tells people not to use it. But if people are on a fixed income and can't afford to go to locations that have a regulated watering point or go to towns or buy bottled water, then that's what they're gonna use. Because if you're thirsty, it's like the need is immediately or you'll die of thirst basically, and nobody wants to die, so you're gonna get what's available to you. And I do see a lot of that's happening. And as a researcher, I do sample a lot of these waters and inform community members about water quality. And one of the stuff that I'm looking at the moment is to figure out a water filtration system that's more that's cost effective that can be used in areas as well. And I myself as a researcher is looking into that. And then my collaboration with Columbia University is that something that we're talking about as well as like folks from the University of New Mexico. And I am working with University of Arizona on such system as well as NINA water filtration systems under Dr. Coletta Chief and her colleagues as well. So we do have a couple of pilot projects that's happening here in Objective Chapter or in Monument Valley area inside Monument Valley Travel Park, where I during COVID, the community members inside Monument Valley Travel Park were mad that did not have any access to water. So there are springs there that were utilized a long time ago, and I went in there and with some donation of tanks and some other supplies, and I was able to get some funding, and I was able to go in there and make use of three springs. They are Pine Spring was the first one that I worked on, and then the other two are Iron Spring and Sand Spring. And the first spring, Pine Spring, is the one that will help build trust with the community members inside Mineville Tribal Park, and now when I say I'm going to do something, they believe that I will follow through on a lot of that. So the community building extra stuff.
So let's open it up. I want you all to drop your questions into the chat or comment section now, and you can also raise your hand. We can have people who are attending right now ask some questions. So, Missa, are there any questions that we can ask Dr. Rock from the chat?
Just a moment, Joe. I'll open up the chat. I was listening and not paying close attention.
And thank you, Mike, for your question.
I don't see any, Joe. But if there aren't any other questions at the moment, a question that I always like to ask our guests is that we're typically talking about issues that impact us every day. So, Dr. Rock, if we were to spend some of our time, energy, and efforts to make sure that we're advocating to remediate these mines, to make sure that families are safer, to protect our water sources in northern Arizona, where is the best place for us to spend our energy advocating for a change around this issue and getting these mines cleaned up?
I think that when it comes to uranium mining, there's only one policy that I see, but it has to do with a uranium mill. There's a uranium mill radiation Uranium Mill Tailing Radiation Control Act. That's the only policy that I see when it comes to uranium mining, but that's more on the milling side. When it comes to uranium mining, I don't see any policy related to that. So there has to be some sort of policy in remediating a lot of these abandoned uranium mines or hard rock mining as well. So far, there's none. And I think is that something that is needed, very much needed. So it's just not reservations, off reservation as well. This is like to protect the public health.
Thank you. And are there organizations, nonprofits, or community activists out there doing the work who could use a boost in sharing their messaging, or some hands to help with their work?
Um, I say the organization can that I can think of is Grand Canyon Trust. I know they're doing work on that, and I know one of the people from that organization. Her name is Amber. Forgot her last name, but she's like energy director for Grand Canyon Trust, and she does a lot of work around that area as well. So she'll be like the best person to work with and collaborate as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Rock. I will hand it back over to Joe.
I just wanted to remind everyone you can drop your questions in, and you can also unmute yourself. But I wanted to read one comment by Larry. So he mentions that the contamination you speak of is statewide, and his home in Tucson is a mile north of the Tohono O'odham, and the he speaks about the house has been closed off due to old lead mines and radiation level. 50 years ago, kids used to play in that mine. The entire area was always had high radon levels, and he would expect the reservation also had those high levels in exposure.
Yeah. What I was talking about is there were some lead mines just south of the property between the house and the Honotham reservation, and the house is still there, and that whole subdivision is fine, but there's always been high radon levels, and there's lead mines between the house and the reservation, and miraculously, about 10 years ago, some residents apparently got concerned about those lead mines, and that whole area down there where the lead mines are were miraculously closed off. But I mean, 50 years ago, all the neighborhood kids always played in those mines. So, and of course, lead mines are pretty much deteriorating uranium. So and it's always had, there was always, I'm sure, elevated, radiation levels in that area. And the area has always had high radon levels. We had to always make sure to have, the houses had to be sure to have plenty of ventilation and make sure that they were vented properly so that we didn't accumulate radon in the houses. So it's that whole area, and of course with the Tohono O'odham reservation right there, it's always a danger.
Yeah. Yes. Um, it's yeah, like I mentioned before, it's a problem off the reservation and on the reservation as well. And with lead, there are numerous studies that show that if kids are exposed to lead, it affects their cognitive ability. I mean, it's like they'll have like learning issues as they're growing up.
Two questions queued up. I wanted to say from one individual, how is the current administration's cuts to staff and programs affecting this cleanup and water protection? And that's the first question. And the second question is from Kashina. In what ways can we get youth more involved and aware of issues such as these in our communities?
When it comes to policies related to exposure and water, and that's a really tough one because we hear talks of deregulations quite a bit from the current administrations, and I don't know to what extent. I haven't seen that yet. And some of the researchers that I talked to is like we're waiting to see what happened before we can react. And it seems like a lot of the state regulators and federal regulators have their hands tied at the moment because of um scaling back and people being let go and certain words such as justice um not being included in a lot of these federal programs or funding and also which creates a problem. And I was telling my students that if this is the case, then it's like working with grassroots organizations, not only like Grand Canyon Trust, but with the Sierra Club, and I know there's some another organization down in Tucson, it's like biodiversity something, forgot the name of it, and like Sierra Club and all like they can pick up some of the slack when it comes to environmental contaminants and help address these issues as well. So it's like other organizations need to step up and help the state and the federal government address these environmental contaminants. And that's how I see it. And as researchers, we can help as much as we can as well. I do have access to labs that I can get some water sample or soil sample and get those analyzed and coming from Princeton as well as like my mentor from there, Dr. John Higgins. He always tells his audience and he says like he can send sample to his lab. He can help um um get information on water quality as well. So it's like there are other academic institutions that were willing to help address that as well.
So Dr. Tomiruk, before we go to some of the other questions in the chat, I just wanted to see if anyone that's listening live right now and would like to ask any verbal questions. Let me give you a minute if you want to go ahead and ask a verbal question to Dr. Tomiruk.
Good
Jared?
morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jacob Hendry. I'm with community of Civic on the Fort Apache Reservation. I
Yeah.
did some surveys for some companies out there, especially with the ongoing issues with the Oak Flat area.
Yeah.
My concern is, what are you guys doing regarding the sacred sites and artifacts related to the uranium mining in the areas you guys are discussing? What do you guys plan to do in regards to those areas, and how do you guys plan to protect them? That's what I did a lot of surveys on. And then the water system itself, I caught the back end of it. Salt River Canyon borders the St. Carlos White Mountain Apache tribe. And we had the late 60s, early 70s to mid 70s, a lot of the mines that were in the Salt River Canyon were shut down due to asbestos, a large amount of asbestos. A lot of them haven't been cleaned up. And when you ask questions about it, it's always, you're always told, leave it alone. Something has been done already. But you still see a lot of contaminants out there. How would you address that regarding our tribe and our sister tribe? And the main thing is protecting the sites out there. That I surveyed for that. I've seen a lot all over the place. And when we have our elders talk about immemorial, time immemorial, you look at what is out there and what is being destroyed. That is something that I hold very dearly. And I'd like to get your input on that.
Thank you for your question. That's an excellent question. And well, first of all, it's like you need to know that I'm a professor at Northern Arizona University. And so some of the stuff that you're talking about has to do with like some of the policies like the Native American Religious Freedom Act. And as a researcher around sacred sites and around environmental contaminations, like um and talking to some other professors from like University in Mexico, they really have a lot of faith with the Native American Religious Freedom Act, and there's like numerous court cases that try to use the Native American Religious Freedom Act around sacred sites, and every one of them fail, unfortunately. And when I look at Native American Religious Freedom Act, and especially around sacred site, and even the one over in Flagstaff around San Francisco Creek, which is a sacred site for a lot of tribes, it failed as well. And the Native American Religious Freedom Act needs to be straightened, not just as a good gesture, which I think this policy is. This is a nice good gesture. It doesn't have no teeth. There's no penalty when you use that, and the only way that can happen is like if the Democrat and Republican help straighten up that policy around Native American Religious Freedom Act. And I do see a lot of tribe facing that as well as like there's San Francisco Peaks and there's Mount Taylor as well. There's like uranium mining that's going to happen there as well, and there's tribes that are fighting that. The Palo tribe, Navajo Nation as well. The Zuni tribe, they're fighting that as well. That's like a sacred site for numerous tribes, like I mentioned. So so I do see that as a problem, and when it comes to asbestos, is like um it sounds like that's off reservation as well. So that goes in jurisdictions of Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and with that, it's like there needs to be pressure put on them to address that, to do the remediation on those sites as well, because like I said, it's some of these issues falls under state jurisdiction as well. So that creates a problem, especially with tribes as well. It's like and with asbestos, I do see that on Navajo Nation as well. Former boarding schools have asbestos, and the one in Kienta, the old boarding school had asbestos problem, and that was cleaned up. I don't know who cleaned that up, but that was addressed. And I do see some of those asbestos pipe still lying around, and people are not touching it, and that's not being addressed as well. So it's just not a tribal problem. I think it's also people in rural areas have that same issue as well with asbestos as well. So it's like and I haven't heard anything in terms of addressing that. But yeah, you're right. That needs to be put on one of those issues that affects public health and that needs to be addressed.
Dr. Rock, I want to ask a couple more people if they want questions. I'm going to read one in the chat here in a minute, but I did notice Kathleen and Dotson, I think you were unmuted. I put you all both on mute, but if either one of you wanted to ask a question next, go ahead and unmute yourself. So Kathleen or Dotson, if you wanted to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll give you a moment to unmute yourself and ask any questions. If not, I'll go ahead and ask the question by Tim in the chat. How has the Department of Interior been involved?
In terms of uranium mining, um, I haven't seen anything yet. And I haven't really looked into that yet. So I can get back to you on how the Department of Interior has been involved in the past and answer your question on that. And then I do see questions on how to get youth involved. As a researcher, this is some of the question that comes up as a researcher working with tribal communities. And my collaborator and I, Dr. Jonathan Credo, we've been talking about that. And the way we like to get the students involved is help the students get involved on the research side, like show them collecting samples, maybe show them some of the lab stuff, maybe prepping them so they see the process. So it's like if they're involved like a chemistry class or some geography class or something along that line, to show them that those skills are there, or there was like a um the stuff that they're learning is applicable in real life scenario. And I think that'll be a good way for students to get involved as well. And it will help spark an interest in STEM STEM education, like science, some sort of science, math, or what have you. So that's my response to that. And with the research that I'm involved in and my collaborators are involved in, this is something that we do discuss about getting high school students involved.
Thank you, Dr. Rock. I want to give, before we close, the time now is 9:46. We'll begin to wrap this up here with some closings. I wanted to go ahead and turn some time over to Derek Espinalis. So let's go ahead and give you a moment, and then I'll wrap up our Cafe 6 here in a minute. Go ahead, Derek.
Appreciate the time. I'm attempting right now to get onto the ballot for the Arizona Corporation Commission, which has a lot to do, for those that don't know, has a lot to do with the issues we're talking about today about water, transmission lines, and does have some influence when it comes to mining. And so I did throw my link into the chat room. If you are a registered voter or if you're not registered to vote, I appreciate you signing my ballot. I'd also appreciate just anyone reaching out to me just to have a discussion. I'm learning, especially in the rural areas, I'm learning a lot. Even being in Tucson, we complain that everything's Maricopa centric. Even in Tucson, we think everything in the world centers around Tucson. But I also had a question for Dr. Rock. This may be cynical, but you mentioned, the lack of teeth in some of the legislation for the tribes, and finding that difficult to get anyone to do anything. I think that has a lot to do with proximity, like I just mentioned. It's hard to think about tribal life when I'm doing everything in Tucson. But you also mentioned that there's other communities being contaminated. What are those communities that are also being affected? Because I think maybe if we can leverage their self-interest, there might be a synergy between their self-interest and protecting tribal lands.
I do have like a collaboration with Columbia University, and they were out here last week. They've been out here for the past 2 weeks, I think, and they're doing some work in Petrified National Park off of I-40 near Holbrook. I mentioned this because they do have past uranium mining in that national park, and talking to them, it's like they have no documentation of past uranium mining activity on that in that area. And they show me some of the uranium um core that they've seen, and there's like a pile of dirt in those areas as well. And there's no signs there that sound like what they're being exposed to or what they're walking through. So there needs to be a better job of informing not only visitors like our guests like in these national parks and state parks, and help them protect them. I think that's like something that can be done at a state level. And um and with some of the stuff that I've seen, especially with Sanders, is the groundwater contaminations, like a lot of stuff that happened on the New Mexico side, Church Rock area, and the spill, the mining, etc., etc. And I do see some groundwater contamination in Sanders areas, and some of them um, that I've seen goes off the reservation. And I'm just thinking of if it's going to reach Holbrook. I don't know. And I think that's something that the state can look into as well, like groundwater. And I know it's like there's some water that's coming from White River, and with a lot of heavy metals, like one of the solution is dilution. So there's a lot of water coming in, and that will help dilute it prior to get into to that location. Is like to what extent is that contamination that so that's I'm really curious about that myself. So that's something that the state can help with, and you as well.
Thank you for that, Derek. Now it's 9:51. Let me check our chat to see if there were any additional questions that didn't get asked. I know Janice asked about the environmental and health implications of uranium mining processing and waste disposal, and what measures are in place to mitigate those risks. Did you have any additional comments on this?
I'd like to answer Zoo's questions on how is current administration, Texas staff, and program affecting this cleanup and water protections, and um that's some of that is still ongoing and happening, and that's the dust hasn't settled yet. So to what extent that has affected, I don't know. And in terms of remediation, some of the cleanups happening, um, I don't know how my tribe would respond to that. And I did put my name in to be back on the Denying Uranium Remediation Advisory Commission for my tribe. And once I get on there, then I'll have more information on the extent of that as well. So right now, I'm just like waiting to see where we're at on that as well. So it's the chaos is ongoing. And what was the other one? I'm sorry.
That's the comment after that. Let's bring us back to the state mining inspector. Mike, thank you for this comment. And it's important that we elect someone that is not always on the GOP side. We need to change that. And I know this is a position that we've floated around, but have you thought about that, state mine inspector?
I'm still thinking about it. It's a big step. So it's like I'm still thinking about that as well. So it's like, and with the stuff that's happening, and how that can help tribes. Yeah, I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about what's happening to our relative, the Apache Nation and Totem Order nations when it comes to hard rock mining as well. The copper mining, the past lead minings as well. So
Well, Dr. Rock, thank you truly for showing up in this space with courage, depth, and a real fierce commitment to the Diné people and all people that's affected by these heavy metals, this contamination. This wasn't just educational, this was a wake-up call. And to everyone listening, this is why we created Cafe 6, is to hear voices like Dr. Rock's, to talk about what's not being talked about, to organize, to act, and to heal. So just a reminder, this is part 1. We'll be back for part 2 with Dr. Rock on Friday, April 18th. That's the 3rd Friday of the month. Again, we have 2 Cafe 6 planned, the first Friday and the 3rd Friday of every month. So we would love you all to join us. So we'll be sharing the registration links in the chat. You can follow us on social media. And if this conversation moved you, please share it. Donate if you can. The work that we do is year-round on sovereign lands. Every bit helps us keep going. This event was brought to you by the Arizona Native Democrats. We are a majority tribal team working across the Navajo Nation, Hopi, White Mountain Apache, and now expanding to San Carlos, Yavapai Apache, and the Tohono O'odham Nations. So we believe every voter matters, and we're here to make sure that no one is left behind. So, Missa, any additional words to share? We are wanting to stay grounded, connected, and stay in the fight.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Joe, for hosting today. Thank you, Dr. Rock. We're really grateful for your expertise and knowledge. It's really important we share this stuff widely. In addition to Dr. Rock, on the 18th of the month, we're going to have Harley Interpreter. She is with Diné College. She's going to be discussing the impacts of Trump's DEI policy on the Navajo Nation and beyond. Just talking broadly about the impacts of these just cruel policies being put in place. May 2nd, we're going to have Chris Mays, Arizona's Attorney General, and one of the strongest leaders in the nation in fighting back against Donald Trump on our program. So please tell your friends about that one. That'll be a lot of fun to hear. A fiery Chris Mays, get us all engaged and tell us how we can help out. And I'm really happy to share that on the 18th of the month, Arizona Corporation candidate Derek Espadas is going to be joining us. And Derek, I want to say thanks to you for putting your name in the ring early. Being up here in Northern Arizona in these spaces, I know you joined Apache County Democrats last week, and really meeting the folks and learning about what's happening here, and we will help you get those signatures. Dr. Rock, I am excited to have an opportunity to chat with you about what your future plans may hold. And I know that there are a lot of folks who are rooting for you to continue the work you do because it benefits everyone. So thank you so much, sir. Really grateful for what you do. And get out in the streets tomorrow, folks. There are many opportunities to be out. Again, just to recap, on the Hopi Nation at the Hopi Cultural Center from 8 a.m. until noon, there is going to be a hands-off event. There's going to be in Show Low in front of the card player statue from 10 a.m. to noon an event. We have over 100 folks signed up already to join us in Show Low, and we had 30 people come together on Wednesday night to make posters together and share in the community that we have. And then finally, there's an event in Window Rock that begins at 10 a.m. where Aces Wild, the band's going to be. This is at the intersection of the 264 and the highway that runs north to oh my gosh, just help me out here. Fort Defiance, there it is, up to Fort Defiance. So join folks on the corner, get on the streets, make sure your voices are heard. Don't forget to call Eli Crane and remind him that he's not doing a good job. And I'm so grateful to you. Joe, anything to wrap us up?
No, again, Tommy Rock, thank you for your time. I know it's absolutely valuable, and again, I'll be out there to join you with everything that you're doing on the water fight. So, Tommy, you want to close us?
Well, thank you all, and looking forward to the next conversations. And there, I think I'll be talking about some of the water stuff and some of the stuff that I'm working on. And my organization is called honorwater.org. I can put that in chat so you can check out some of the stuff that I've been doing. It's a nonprofit organization and working with community members and paying them for some of the stuff that I'm working on, as well as educating them on water policies such as the Safe Drinking Water and the Clean Water Act as well. So I'll be excited to talk to you about that, and thank you for having me. And I'm pretty excited about this. Thank you very much.